Today's show is focused on something called Paul Krugman, Genius and Tesla. Paul Krugman is a New York Times columnist and economics Nobel laureate, and he actually did a piece this week. I think it's one of his best articles ever in anywhere, including the New York Times. And I think it's really important for us to take a look at it because it definitely has an impact in terms of what's going on with Tesla and other entities globally, even though the distance is a little bit wide. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Now, we also want to note this is a copyrighted broadcast. Anything said here cannot be used without written permission. We also want to note that we'd like to encourage you to like and subscribe. Definitely impacts the channel. We have a Patreon facility as well, where we do daily shows that cover different material than we do in our regular show that I believe will enhance and make your investing and trading better. Right now we're at a place called Maximo Park, and the tide has gone out and the birds are grubbing down on the residue of that, which is part of the whole nature observation that we're enjoying right now. So I first met Paul Krugman about 20 years ago while he was teaching at Stanford. It was fascinating because when he arrived, I believe his PhD is from MIT, but while he was at Stanford, he was getting a chance to work with at least one of the Nobel laureate there, but the environment was obviously one that he chose to be exposed to. Since then, he's moved on to Princeton and other places for teaching, and he's won the Nobel laureate. I had a really interesting sort of encounter with him. What happened is that I was doing some work for him, and he was teaching a class at Stanford in econ, and I was kind of stunned because there was an article in the Wall Street Journal where the governments of Singapore and Malaysia had announced that they had both studied and implemented structural modifications to their economies based on Professor Krugman's criticism. And once those changes had been made, they helped facilitate the successful forward progress of those economies. So after I saw this in the journal, I had to step back, and I was kind of stunned that one person could be doing research and writing on it that could result in a complete restructuring of an entire country's economy. And so I instantly became a fan because not only did he write the criticism and it was detailed, but the modifications were made and those countries enjoyed a lot of success because they implemented the changes that he had recommended. So since then, I've seen him in different lights. He's now a New York Times columnist. If you get a chance, it's worth subscribing to New York Times Online. You'll also notice that every time he writes a column, there are a whole large number of individuals and economists that read what he wrote about, and then they actually have discussions, both written and in media, of his work. The biggest thing that he's been doing, and he did it in this article as well, and why I love checking him out all the time, is that right now, you can call him a public intellectual. So he's not officially part of the government, etc. But what's actually going on is there are a large number of government economists, etc., that read everything he wrote. So the general sort of concept that's been going on right now when it comes to the Fed and the Treasury is, should the Fed take away the punch bowl and potentially tank the economy? Or A, or B, should they leave the punch bowl out there and hope that the inflation superheating doesn't do that destruction itself? So Professor Krugman, in his latest article, is talking about the, if you will, the soft economists have seemingly been ruling the process of how everything works. He goes back into the the 30s to look at monetary policy coming forward from then, and the logic that was being used by the Fed chair at each of these strategic points. And the general concept that's going on right now is we definitely don't want inflation to destroy the economy. The problem you have, though, is should we clamp down aggressively and potentially destroy the economy, or let things run and hope that the inflation situation gets under control as we recover from how the pandemic has impacted everything. The key to it is that nobody knows the absolute answer right now, and there are a lot of techniques being used to sort of find the way. The general look that I've been hearing from the Fed and the Treasury is that we want to err on the side of liquidity, i.e. Allowing the economy, we have a battle of squirrels going on here, allowing the economy to continue without inflicting a lot of damage in terms of controls with higher interest rates, et cetera, that we might have available, because it's a precarious position we're in. If you do clamp down hard, you could tank the entire economy. And then the question is, what do you do to help revive what's occurred? The answer is that it's going to be a lot harder to figure that out than it is to allow things to continue largely as they are, monitoring it to make sure you don't have an overheated situation. I really think that anyone can argue against what's going on right now based on the fact that you're having high inflation, it's affecting jobs, there's a number of ways. But if we had Germany, for example, and several of the European countries shut down, and we kind of return to the COVID world again, you could have a clampdown, in essence, sort of be very destructive to the global economy. So I think that we have some really great monitors of what's going on and what might occur, and I really think that the right thing is being done. Now, when we look at what's happening with Tesla, clearly Tesla's a global entity, as it impacted globally. When you look at, for example, I read an article in CNBC regularly regarding Tesla having increased prices by $1,000 or $2,000 regularly. The point there is that Tesla, like anybody else, is subject to increasing commodity prices, which are resulting in higher costs for all entities out there. And so, you add supply chain issues to it, which also increases costs, and we have a compounded elements that are making the economy not work as smoothly as it should. And I really have confidence in the quality of leadership that we have, both inside the academic walls and within the government, in terms of trying to figure out best process to optimize what's going on for the U.S. government, for the U.S. economy / global economy. So this is slightly more of an editorial on the fact that Krugman really puts out great information, number one. Number two, we do have a problem with inflation right now, but number three, that the Fed / Treasury is trying to figure out that right balance of reduction of stimulus with what to do with the interest rates to make sure that we move along an optimized path. There's one other note that I wanted to make here, and that is that I watch oil prices a lot to see where they are. And one of the fascinating things I've been watching about this is, oil prices are 2% of the costs of everybody, including consumers. As they rise, all those costs make it more difficult for people and companies to operate, particularly if they can't pass those cost increases along to their consumers. Now, one of the aspects for me that's been crazy interesting to watch is that the Saudis are really mad about the fact that the U.S. became the largest producer of oil through the efforts of the fracking folks. So as we got into COVID, you recall that oil prices dropped to as low as $15 a barrel. And the reason for that was the Saudis decided that if they could deliver they can make money at 15, not as much as they'd like to. But the general concept there was, is there a way to bankrupt large numbers of frackers, and that way the Saudi control of oil prices would return to people like OPEC? Well, they executed that plan to a T, and we had the bankruptcy of the frackers. We also know that $50 a barrel when you're getting oil from shale oil or from fracking is about the basement of what those guys can do. And so if you have an $80 barrel, they can make money at this level. The question is, how fast can they restart or identify new production while those price points are up, and will those price points stay up so they continue to be able to make money? So the answer right now is that the Saudis seem to be saying that there isn't enough frac capacity available to impact how they want to run the oil market, and so we're stuck with these higher prices. But if this can be figured out, this might be one way that we end up dropping the amount of inflation based on oil prices actually falling rather than rising, and we'll be seeing how this works out as we move into the next few months, year. So I, in general, wanted to just highlight the Krugman analysis and the fact that by reading his stuff, you actually get kind of a window on what the Fed is thinking about, because so many of those folks are colleagues of his or people implementing his research. So please, if you have a chance, take a look at Paul Krugman. New York Times, his last article, fantastic. And as always, they're fantastic, but in this case, he includes graphs and other materials that allow an in-depth analysis of what the Fed is up to and why, and will give you an advanced look at where we are now, where we're headed when it comes to our economy, which does have an impact on everything, including Tesla. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, Lehitro, Hebrew, Hoda, Hafez, Farsi, Zdravstvuyte, Russian, Nihama, Chinese, Konbanwa, Japanese. Have a great day. Bye for now. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to our next discussion.